Hi, I'm Dr. Gaby Cora and welcome to my show, Dr. Gaby's Take Make Life Interesting. Hi, and welcome to Season 1, Episode 9, The Magic Eye. Are you someone who needs to see to make sure that it exists, or that you need to hear something to make sure that it exists, or need to make sure that you can feel something or touch something to make sure that it's real? Well, today's show is going to touch upon some of these issues and more. The second point about magic eye is judgment. Do you find yourself constantly looking at right and wrong? Constantly looking at white or black? Constantly looking at whether something is true or false? So, do you live your life by constantly judging every single part of your life? The third point that I want to make is about beliefs. Do you believe what you used to believe as a little one? Do you believe in things that your parents may have taught you when you were young and you never questioned, or you never even had any doubts about what other people brought to you as a source of belief or something that was true? So our episode today will touch upon things that we see and things that we don't see, but that they may still be there right in front of us, and it's up to our magic eye to be able to discover and delve into something that may or may not be real. You be the judge. I met Jamie Butler 10 years ago. We were sitting one next to one another during a hypnosis exercise. So while someone was speaking out loud what they were seeing during their hypnotic trance, I was just listening to that while Jamie was drawing. And I couldn't help myself but peek into her drawings every once in a while, particularly as she looked back at me with a huge smile on her face, and she would start pointing at things that she had just drawn. Well, in awe, shock, and just a lot of just being really surprised, I realized Jamie was actually drawing things before the person spoke up what she was seeing. This really struck me. I couldn't understand how Jamie could see these things before the other person said them, particularly if they were seemingly unrelated to the content of what the person was speaking out loud. After this, I met Jamie and I'm like, Jamie, wait, who are you? And she just smiled at me and said, I'm clairvoyant. I was just drawing what I could see in my mind's eye. So with that introduction, I want to introduce you to Jamie Butler, and hopefully you'll learn from her and from her world, and just make sure that you can understand how to look into that magic eye and see things that you may not see firsthand. Enjoy. Hi, I'm with Jamie Butler, and I have you here for a treat. Let me share a bit with you of how I met Jamie. I was sitting next to her as she was drawing something before someone else was relating their story. This sounds very odd, and I thought it was very odd to me too. So let me just ask Jamie, when you and I were sitting next to one another and someone was recalling something that they had not even spoken yet, what were you seeing that I was not seeing?
I was seeing energetically what they were putting out around them. Some people can call it a telepathic skill, which I don't really think I'm that great at, but it's more of a premonition. You can connect with that person's energy to their memory of what they had experienced, and it feels like you're in the same space that they are in. So I was just taking the liberty to sketch it out so that I could compare or show to the people next to me to understand more of what the person was trying to convey.
And I was just that person sitting right next to you.
Yes.
And I must share with you, I was totally shocked. Partly because I didn't know. I think it was a main and plain ignorance on my end. I just didn't know that that was even possible. Tell me a bit more. How do you see those images? Do you see them completely formed in your mind? Do you see a sketch? Do you see a blurry vision? Do you see colors? Tell me a bit of what you see.
Ah, a bit of what I do, huh?
Yes.
It's different in every occasion. It's just like, depending on the weather, your vision is impaired or very clear. You can see the horizon line or not. It depends on the person's energy that I'm connecting to. If it is very crisp and clear in communication, then I can see in great detail. So to see energetically, and it's in different levels. So hopefully, I'm gonna make some sense,
So let me
right?
ask you this. Let me ask you this. Let's say that I'm very clear with my own visions in my mind. Would that make it easier for you to see as clearly?
Oh yes, definitely.
So, and on the other hand, if I'm really blurry, if I'm really confused, would that also translate into what the clarity in which you could see things?
Yes, it would.
And tell me more about what you can see and when and how.
When and how? Well, I've always been able to have this ability to see energy, to see also people who've passed away. And the way that it shows up is in different ways. I can see it visually outside, just like you are looking at your computer screen right now, is how I would see the vision coming to me or how I would see the person who's passed away. There are also times where I see it like a movie screen or pictures filing through my head, kind of in that spot where we call the imagination. So, right in here. And it's the same way with my ability to hear as well. Most of the time, I hear it externally, like you're hearing my voice, but sometimes I get it like an internal role, like that inner voice that kind of haunts us from time to time, like don't buy that chocolate, but you buy it anyways, that voice. And the clarity of either depends on two things. Am I balanced? Am I centered? Am I willing to pick up on what's coming? Am I in my way? And also, who is giving me the message? Are they clear about what's going on, or are they fogged up as well? And fogged up can come from many different things: emotional, mental, physical. It's really the whole picture.
So, for example, you mentioned that you have to be well centered, grounded. How do you go about that?
It's a day to day process for myself, being a mother of two and running your own business and a wife. So, what I do, I really like to watch what I eat. I notice that when I consume, let's see, sugars, caffeines, kind of lower end foods, that I get slow, bogged down, disinterested. I shut out, I phase out. So, I pay attention to what I eat. Sleep for me is very important. And I really need to give you a big thank you because you helped me many years ago really identify that sleep doesn't just happen when I get into bed and close my eyes. It actually happens the 2 hours before I decide to go to bed, and that's when I need to shut down so that then when my body closes its eyes and goes to sleep, it can actually rest. So now that I have that down, oh, it's heavenly. My body gets the rest it needs. Then I pay attention to the environment. What am I surrounding myself with? Who am I surrounding myself with? Are they the people who are going to honor the boundaries that I'm setting? Are they going to constantly challenge me? Does the environment make me feel peaceful, or do I feel like I'm under stress that I can't accept what's being placed or what's being done? It's not necessarily this whole control issue that a lot of people try to think that it is or deal with control. It's acceptance of what you are choosing to place around you. And it took a long time to put that in line. And now that it's there, that day-to-day process that I talk about, it's management. It's not this fight to keep it alive and struggle. And the management places in line, so when it comes time for me to be able to use my natural abilities and my gifts, they're there. And it doesn't require that 15-minute meditation or that 6-day cleanse that some people talk about to be able to really align and center themselves. It's there every day when I'm doing the dishes, when I'm talking to my husband, when I'm playing with my kids. That centeredness, it remains. It doesn't require a focus.
So you kind of found your own tempo in a way and your own rhythm, and now that you found it, it's more about respecting it and protecting it and making sure that you can repeat it over and over again in your daily cycle.
Yes, absolutely.
And when you're well and you realize that you can control somewhat control, I guess that sometimes people who come to see you are distraught, they're sad, they're angry, they may have all these kinds of very intense emotions. So it's very important that I realize it's very important for you to be okay. What do you do for them? Tell me a bit of what is it that someone can come in to see you with, and you give back, and then you come back to your own center and grounding.
So, what I can give to them in a reading is a translation of the answers that they're asking. I guess I don't really know how to put it in exact words. It varies. It's so different from every person, and a lot of it is just them needing to hear certain words. A lot of them is just a needing to understand, and a lot of the times it's just needing someone to listen. But mostly what I do is I translate the energy that's around them into words, and I feed it back to them about what they're doing. And that's when I'm looking at the person's energetic field. And then I'm communicating with the spirits that are around them, be it guides, angels, relatives, friends, however you yourself would like to label who those entities are. I'm able to communicate with them in a very casual way and understand what the situation is, and maybe enlighten them with a different perspective, a different kind of understanding, and often closure. And when this is over, I mean, I've had my days where I walk them out the door, I'm crying, they're crying, and the door closes and I sit down and I just go, why why is it me? Why am I in this world? Why am I able to do this? And you learn quickly not to question, but to accept the greatness of what we're all capable of doing. And honestly, the greatest passion that I have is showing other people that they have it too. I am not different than anybody else. I just understand more, maybe, or have a broader perspective. I tell people anybody can learn to play the piano, whether you are finger tapping Mary Had a Lamb or you're playing, Mozart's greatest. The ability for you to learn is there. It is just you need that openness, open mind, that open understanding that maybe what you believe in isn't the end all be all. There's something beyond that. And so we have to knock down and understand that truly what we believe in is our own truth, and that our knowledge is actually our limit. It could be a limit that contains us, or a limit that totally expands our existence. And I remind myself of that, and it's how I try to stay centered and calm and wake up every day and go, oh wow, this is what I'm doing again.
Well, it's so interesting. I was watching the movie Hereafter over the weekend, in which there's a psychic and there's someone else who's also died and come back to life. And the movie addresses a lot of the not only skepticism, but denial or even just rejection of people who may have had some of these experiences. How do you deal with the skeptics? How do you deal with people who may come to you and go like, you're totally nuts, or you're out of it, or you're misleading people. I'm sure there's many things that people have said along the way. How do you respond to that? What do you usually say?
I remember before I met you, and when we created a relationship, when these people would come to me, I would freeze. I would freak out. I would actually cry on the inside and just shake, not knowing how to respond to the person, thinking it was my fault, I was guilty. And I created this own self-burden that was completely unnecessary. And then through learning how to set a boundary and understanding that this person's skepticism, misunderstanding of me is not my responsibility. And so when these people show up, whether it's in a reading, in a private session, or in a group, in a room, and I call that person the wolf in the room. And so you look for the wolf in the room and you immediately embrace them instead of headbutt them. And I applaud them. I say, yes, your skepticism, I will never take that away from you. That is not why I'm here. You keep that. That is who you are. And I applaud you for your strong voice. I applaud you for who you are. Now, let's just acknowledge that you have this, and let's just continue. And I completely changed the understanding in the room, the energy in the room, and it just moves on. Whereas before I would fall apart. Now it's more of a good for you for knowing who you are and not changing because of someone else and what they say.
So by the end of the day, they may go like, well, I can speak up and I can be upset about this if I want to. And you say, sure, sure, sure. And they're like, okay.
I say, absolutely. I'm going to give you that 5 minutes of voice out in the room that you need to complain that I've said something that really challenged you and that you felt it was inappropriate. And then we give a little time to understand that I'm not trying to bowl over anybody's belief or anybody's religion. And we hold space for it, we acknowledge to disagree, and we let it go.
Well, one of the things that really fascinated me from your work is your ability to break down your knowledge into smaller steps and teach anywhere from kids to their parents to other people to other skeptics. So tell me a bit about how you came about to teach other people and to really try to simplify some of what you can do that other people cannot do.
Personally, I stick to 8th grade vocabulary and I don't exceed it.
So that helps.
It does help.
But let's say, for example, I don't see auras. I don't see things like you do. So, but at the same time, because of my own experience, being a psychiatrist and having other experience, I really try to open up and realize that, well, the fact that I can't think certain things or that I can't feel certain things doesn't mean that other people can't. So in your case, whenever you see energy, whenever you see lights, whenever you see something and you realize I don't, what comes to you to explain it in simple earthly ways so that the rest of us can understand something that for you is everyday stuff.
Every day. I like to debunk a lot of myths. A lot of people believe in what they see. So if I see that, then that is real. And I take them immediately to train tracks. And I go, oh, look out in the horizon. Tell me what the train tracks do. And they're like, well, they meet. And I was like, they meet, but do they ever touch? Well, no, they don't touch. I said, yet you're going to believe in what you see. And they go, no, I'm not going to believe that because I know. And I go, oh, how did you know that? Well, you were taught or you experienced it. You walked those tracks. And they go, well, yeah. And I go, okay, so now we know that maybe we can't believe everything we see in. And then I go more of the scientific route, the tangible route, and teach them what is their eye actually doing? How does it work? And a lot of times people don't know how the light reflects off the retina, how it holds an image, how you can see a subtle image. And then I ask them questions because I bet they've already experienced this, but yet they kind of tack it off to imagination. Poor imagination gets more credit for our intuition than anything else. So we find those points and they go, well, yeah, that did happen and no, I can't explain it. And then you say, well, is the possibility more energetic? And then talk about the energies of the body, the chakra system, how the energy works, how it communicates with your physical body, your emotional body, and how it works intuitively. And then the light starts to go on. Well, maybe. And once you have them there in that maybe spot, maybe is where impossible goes away. Possibility is laying on the table and they're going, well, maybe. And you go, oh, okay. Now try this trick is what I call it. Because a trick sounds a little more fun, like it's going to be magical than exercise, because they don't want to hear that it's going to be work. So you say, try this trick, like the Magic Eye books. Have you ever done those? The little
Oh,
computer-generated things, and
right.
you stare at them kind of unfocused, and then this image pops out, 3D world. And I say, well, try this, and they do it. And I say, okay, now you have everything you need. You can do this. You have possibility on the table. You understand the energetics. Now you can see energy. And then we do some practice runs, and lo and behold, they see color. And it's not the mirroring effect from how the eye is working, because they understand that now. They know how to say, okay, I can't explain this. And then we start to look at, well, what does that color energetically mean? And then we go back through centuries of research. This is not just pure American thinking. I mean, we're going back thousands and thousands of years in the eastern side of the world. And connecting these dots together, then interviewing the person saying, well, this color is off of you, and this is what it represents. Is this what you're going through? And the person goes, how did you know? And then I look at the person who's actually, going through as an exercise, and they go, I never thought I could do this. And I say, well, now it's just practice. So you break it down. You kind of debunk their myths. You show them scientifically, tangibly, what their body can actually do. Teach them a little bit about energetics. Give them that trick or that exercise to do. And then just watch them just disarm themselves and kind of fall out of place to actually realize this is something that we are able to do on a day-to-day basis. Every single person.
And one of the most interesting and exciting things about having this conversation is I think everyone who's listening to you can realize that you make a lot of sense, that you speak in complete sentences, that there's a thread in your conversation. And interestingly, even in psychiatry, which, as you know, is my area of expertise,
It is.
many psychiatrists, and unfortunately, and through some of the scientific research, we tend to say, well, no, there's something wrong with a person who is into this because they won't make sense, because they don't think logically, because they don't think in a thread. So one of the interesting things that, in a way, you're sharing so nicely and generously with the world is that you are logical, you are rational, there's a reason for your thinking, and you really have the ability to translate something that for you is like something that you do every single day into a way that other people can realize that they can also do. We just don't do it because we do see that magic eye before the 3D. And the other interesting thing about that magic eye is that may be right in front of us and we don't even realize what's going on. And then when we realize what's going on, we can even go a step further and see the 3D coming toward us or in the back.
Yes.
So the interesting thing is sometimes people who will see that 3D will see it forward and will think that that's the only thing that they can see. And then you can teach them to even look at it from the back and go like, no, there's maybe more. You're on the right track, but look at this even further. So the interesting thing for you and all the, and all the work that you've done is that you've really tried to play, demystifying many things that people are afraid about, they don't understand, they just don't know how to deal with it. Tell me a bit more of the myths that you commonly find. What are the most common myths that you see whenever you come to work with people?
One that actually has been on my lap for a long time now is about suicide. And it's a very delicate matter, very delicate, because as we all know, when you love someone so much and they have chosen to take their own life, it is a personal hit to yourself mentally and emotionally, and it's quite understandable to not understand why this has happened. And a lot of us like to believe in the right and wrong aspect, and it translates over into the suicide topic, that suicide is wrong. It's absolutely wrong. And I'm not saying right now that it is right. I'm just trying to say that there is no right or wrong about it. It just is. And we have to take it for that. And I get a lot of conversation in here in my private sessions and in my classes where I teach. They bring this up. Well, why? What happens to them afterwards? And it goes along to what your society has taught you about good versus bad, that punishment is needed. But yet, when we go deep into religions, and in any religion, there's this underlying compassionate, no judgment kind of, I wouldn't say a law, but an understanding. And since that exists, and we believe that that exists, but we also want to believe that there's a judgment and there's a right and a wrong, it collides. It can't exist in the same space. And there's a lot of head versus heart battling here about removing from our lives the concept that has been taught to us by our society, by our culture, that there's an extreme right way to do something and there's an extreme wrong way to do something. And once we start digging this belief out and just accepting every moment that happens to you and every decision that somebody else makes as not a right or a wrong, but as a choice, all of a sudden this idea of understanding and compassion and healing of yourself and others seems very, very possible to hold space for. Whereas before, not so much.
So
Not so much.
in our society, like you mentioned, there's this judgment part, and suicide is such a taboo, and it
Yes.
continues to be. We're so scared, in a way, and that makes it even harder to try to understand. Of course, there are some times in which it may come impulsively, and other times in which people have been thinking about it for a long time. I was just reading some numbers where there's millions of people thinking about suicide every year. Not that they even committed, but some do. About 50% may do. And even in kids, in your work, the work that you've done with families, with the people who stay, what have you found around that very tough topic to discuss? So what have you found? What have you sensed? What have you perceived?
In communicating to the spirits who've passed away by choice of own death, they're very verbal about how we call it committing suicide, because you're not committed to this crime or this prison. You're not being held with judgment or punished after death. That's the first thing they like to vocalize to me, is that I made the choice and it was the right choice. And please understand that it was the right choice. And then in the explanation emotionally and mentally of why it was the right choice and how they felt in their life, which normally when they were living they couldn't find the words to express anyways, be it because there was some mental illness or disease or poor communication between the relationships. And they confide in a very, here's where when you hear somebody speak, you know how you can identify, wow, that person's kind of trying to find the words to make it right. And there's sometimes when you listen to someone and you go, oh, that is the truth. You can feel it, you can hear it, you can sense it. And these spirits commonly will talk after suicide is that they're home and they're happy and they're centered, and this is where they want to be. It was a choice of theirs. And they talk about how it needed all the strength in the world to get there. And please accept and understand. And the lesson that goes with it is don't take responsibility for my own choice. It was mine to have, mine to hold. And that they are not being punished. That there's not 100%, but often there is not any kind of backpedaling or learning or mending that needs to be done. I have spoken to spirits who have passed away from suicide, who have actually kind of left their life too early, that they didn't stay for that lesson or that struggle or that fight that they wanted to go through. And so in spirit, they are doing that work with the people who are still living. So they are taking on the slack that they left behind. But that is not happening with every single case that I'm seeing. And as a child and growing up, this experience now that I'm having definitely did not match the belief that I was taught to have. So it was very shocking, eye-opening, and it's very challenging to teach it to other people. It's a very tender and protective topic.
It's very taboo. I'm sure that anyone who's watching will have some, concern or apprehension, because it's a very difficult topic to even begin to discuss. And at the same time, we're thinking about it. We're trying to feel about it, and it's interesting that you're sharing this experience. What other myths have you also found to be interesting in discussing with those left behind? Let's put it that way.
Religion, very intriguing. And I grew up Southern Baptist. It's very intriguing. I used to sit in church and cry. And my mother finally stopped taking me. And I would tell her, that's not how it is. That's not how it is. But I was only, a little girl, 5, 6, and not being able to say, well, I heard it was different and explain it to my mother. So they just kind of stopped taking me. And as I grew up, I said, I want to find that spot where I feel at home in my belief. And I tried all these churches, Judaism, Catholic, Unity. I just tried all of them, and there was nothing one that fit me. And I realized, I'm my own church. My belief system is created within me. I just need to honor it. And talking to all different kinds of religious backgrounds with people who've passed away, people who come into my office, and some, especially working in Atlanta, Georgia, we're considered to be in the Bible Belt. And that is more of a Baptist belief system where you go to heaven or you go to hell. So again, it's that judgment. You're right or you're wrong. Though I've come to find that duality does not exist. It's all together on the same page. And you're talking to someone, and not only are you sharing the words of their loved one, but their loved one is about to totally pull the rug out from their basic religious beliefs. And you're sitting in the room like an innocent little child going, well, I don't know if I want to do this today. And they're saying, please, share this, please. And the common ground is pretty much that we're not just a human being, we're an emotional being. And we need to learn to be the emotional being, not this logical thinking being that makes plans and strives and thrives and climbs a corporate ladder and does all this achievement. It's how are we feeling in this moment? How are we using this to understand where we are? Not to measure where we are, because measuring says right or wrong, but it's to accept, understand, and have compassion. And these qualities seem to be in all the religions, but the details of, and I really don't mean to offend anyone, that is not why I'm speaking out loud. It's just...
With the best of intentions.
It was the best of intentions. It doesn't mean that you need to worship at a certain hour or wear something specific or follow a typical ritual or rule. In understanding this kind of broad religion of people who've passed over, the way they talk about it, it's more emotionally based, morally based. It's not based on action and thinking. And when you slow down to ponder that, as a human, that's what we're really good at, is action and thinking. And especially as Americans, we've kind of put that emotional side a little to the back. And what I see them encouraging us is be an emotional being, not the human being, and see how you can adapt and change what you are doing with yourselves. It actually will become easier, less judgmental on yourself, less critical to yourself. And there's more room for enjoyment and play. And you realize, wow, maybe life is supposed to be easy and fun. And you wonder, can you have that yourself? Because what they're sharing with us is that we can.
I think the interesting thing that you're alluding to, and which I've really learned, because I think that we both learn from one another. I think that's a wonderful thing, is how important it is to be completely aligned. If our head is thinking certain things and it's going that route, and our body is into action that route, and our emotion is confused or somewhere in between, and we're like all over the place, we're not going to have a great experience. And if we're not having a great experience, we're not going to be able to enable that great experience to other people. So what you're really talking about is how you can see that alignment in a way where, yeah, you know, the thinking, the actions is there, but the emotion is there too. Like, you're really honoring who you truly are in a way. You're allowing yourself to feel, and that's the only way that you can really be that true being. And that's where I think a lot of those myths come about. Even in my office as a psychiatrist or as a coach, people usually struggle. People who've been very successful somewhat have this problem. You know, their actions and their thinking go that route, and their emotions go that route. And that's a lot of what happens in a simple way of explaining it, of that lack of alignment. And we do the interesting thing here is I feel that we both do very similar things from different points of view, yes, but our intention is very similar. And I, yes, think that that's what's interesting in demystifying this. What you and I met at Brian Weiss's scheduled training in order to do past life regression therapy for different reasons. We met there, and just sharing with the world a bit. In Jamie's case, she was probably completely aligned of why to go there. I was reluctantly going there after one of my patients asked me to do this therapy to her, and I resisted it. I didn't want to do it. I felt that someone else who knew about it and who was really interested in it should do it. But the interesting thing is, though, that because I really wanted to help my patient, I wanted to help other patients, I reluctantly went to learn about this. So what is interesting is, whether reluctant or whether coming in with grace, let's put it that way. I think the interesting thing is that to realize that there's different people that can help. It's important for us to really feel that someone is honorably trying to help. But it was a different time with Brian Weiss, for example, who was in the pinnacle of his career, very orthodox career, and the whole community of my fellow colleagues did not accept him openly, although they would come privately to see him in this hypocritical world. So I think that what's interesting in this time is that it probably allows us more to be ourselves. Jamie, do you feel that you are yourself? Do you feel that you can bring yourself together with the best of intentions and offer to the world what you're doing these days?
Yes. I'm so happy to say that out loud. Yes. Yes. I actually was having a play date. I have 2 kids, and we were up the street, and my neighbor's mother was there. And the kids were playing, and, kids fall down, and they scrape and scream and this, and I'm watching and, just attentive, but not hovering. And that mother looked at me and she goes, "How do you do it? How are you always like this?" And I just kind of cut my eyes over to her and I said, "Well, maybe I just don't care." And she goes, "That's definitely not it." And I said, "Okay, I'll tell you what it is." And she was okay. And I said, "It's because I love so much that I will let people be who they are." And she just kind of leaned back and looked at me. She goes, "You can do that?" I said, "Yeah." She goes, "Okay." And that was the end of the conversation. But I was so taken back that the conversation was way out of context. It didn't require it to be there with the kids yelling and screaming and stuff. But she had been watching me for so long and just wanted to know, why was I so calm? Why was I so centered? Why could I be this person consistently when she saw me? And she just had to ask. And I thought I could get away with it's probably because I just don't care. And she just wouldn't let me get away with that.
Because she knew you did.
She knew I did. And when it came out of my mouth, I thought, that's it. That's it. That's who I am. That's who I want to be. And I've done it. And so I just sat and smiled, I think, for the rest of the play date, and came home and I was like telling my husband, I was like, "I've done it. I like me. I like this." He was like, "Yay!"
Well, Jamie, thank you so much for being yourself.
Thank you.
And for helping people be themselves too.
Well, thank you for letting me remotely come in.
Thanks for watching my show, and let's think about 2 or 3 things that could help us make life interesting. The first thing that we heard today was about working through our senses. So are you still someone who needs to see to believe, who needs to touch to make sure that it's real, and who needs to hear to make sure with your own ears that that is for real? Or are you someone who's willing to go a little bit of that extra step and try to look into things with your own eyes wide open? That's the first thing to think about. The second one is look into how you make judgment all the time, right or wrong, good or bad, white or black. Is there any way in which you could come together and draw some midpoints there where things don't need to be drastically all good or all bad? So that's the second point that I want you to think about. The third one is look into your belief system. Were these brought to you while you were growing up, or did you come up with these on your own? Are these carved on stone, or do you feel open about hearing or learning about some additional experiences? Last but not least, see how well aligned you are. Make sure that your mind is speaking to your heart and it's speaking through your actions and your words, and that you're a whole person and not just operating here and there and not really feeling whole all or together. So these are just some lessons learned to make life interesting, and think about them, ponder about them, and make sure that you can bring in some nice, great experiences that will continue to help you make life interesting. Thank you for joining me, and hope you enjoyed.